Welcome to the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors auction. My name is Dean Millard. Larry Fisher, the UFHL insider, and Mr. Everything at UFFS is joining me. And Larry, we've been talking about this. I was excited from the very beginning when you guys had this idea, and here we are. Less than an hour now away from overtime in this franchise auction. How are you feeling?
Feeling good, Dean. Can't wait to see that leaderboard. There's already more than 10 bidders, so we know we're going to have some overtime. We're going to have some fireworks at the top of the hour here, and can't wait to sort of show everybody what UFWJ is going to be all about, what these Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors rosters could look like, what just some of the talent that's available. Really preview this year's World Juniors as well as the future, because we're talking about a dynasty league. But certainly all eyes on the leaderboard, Dean. It's going to be a fun hour plus to close out the franchise auction.
Well, we might as well take a look at that leaderboard right now. As you know, when this started, there was a 1 in a column and another 1 in a column, and now there's a couple of zeros and 58 minutes. And this is going to be a very interesting leaderboard, and we're going to get into everything about this leaderboard and who some of these guys are for those that are watching. So let's start with the big man on top, the big group, a $2,500 bid to start us off in 7 Seas Blockchain Sports.
That is Mooch, and Mooch has been one of the biggest supporters of UFFS since the start. He didn't get in originally in hockey, but he purchased the Red Army franchise back in July, and he's been part of every sport launch since, in the UFAFL for football, UFBA for basketball, UFLB for baseball. Just a huge sports fan. He's got a great ownership group there with 7 Seas, and now he's got a great GM and partnership with Draft in Europe with Jeff Ray and Mick Portoni. They're going to be the co-GMs of his franchise with 7 Seas, assuming they get a franchise. But he definitely got us off to a good start with a $2,500 bid. And then, Dean, at number 2, Joseph Perez. This is a new name to the UFFS community. We just met Joseph yesterday. He's an entrepreneur from California. He's big with American Sevens Football League, the A7F, and obviously has some interest in hockey as well. And just from an investment side, he really likes what he's hearing and what he's seeing from the UFFS vision. So he's going to be an active bidder. At number 3, Dean, is George Batchell, who we know from the UFHL GNRs, as well as head scout for the Regal Sports Group. But George, who's heading up the NFT department for UFFS, which obviously super exciting that the NFT place launched this past week as well. But he's formed a partnership with a big member of the Zilka community in Jope. And Jope, we know him from basketball. He was the number 1 bidder in the basketball auction. He's also a high bidder in the UFLB baseball auction. So that's going to be a bit of a power group there with George Batchell and Jope as well in the number 3 spot. Number 4, Jeremy Plamondin is an interesting story, Dean. I actually played senior hockey with Jeremy back 15 years ago. His son's now playing Junior A. Jeremy had a really good Junior A career. He's a scout in hockey. He's a franchise owner in football, owner in baseball. So he was one of our initial investors. He was part of the private sale back in May. So he's been along for the ride all year with UFFS, and certainly looking forward to getting into the hockey side, because hockey is his number 1 sport. So he'll have a lot of fun here in the UFWJ, providing he's a successful bidder. And there we have a leaderboard change, Dean. Dean Millard has jumped up to the number 5 spot. We got a new bid as we're recapping. And Dean Millard, who I guess needs no introduction. He's here co-hosting the show today, or hosting the show. But along with Craig Button, Dean, and you can maybe take a minute to introduce your group and how you guys are approaching the franchise auction.
Yeah, Craig this is how we approach it. We tell Craig where he's drafting, and he picks hopefully a gold medal winning team. But, certainly Craig needs no introduction. He's the president of the hockey department for high level scouting, of which my wife Trish owns. He is, our, consultant du jour for Duckman's Domination. And there was just nobody I was tapping to draft this franchise that we are going to hopefully purchase than Craig. He's going to be there. That's what he is doing. And I feel that if we are successful in getting a franchise, it will be in very, very good hands. So hopefully that happens. And I'm excited to see what happens. Now, Larry, this is the part of the auction that's going to be different for me. I was on the other side for baseball wanting all these extra innings. Now I'm a potential owner. I might not want as much overtime, but I know it'll be so much more exciting if we do get a lot of it. So different mixed emotions as a head of baseball that was hoping to get a lot of extra innings like you are and Andrea and Nathan with hockey. And so it's a little bit different as we take a look at the leaderboard a little bit more.
Yeah, and obviously Craig Button, another man who needs no introduction. He's an authority on the World Juniors. He'll be there covering, as he is every year for TSN, one of their main voices with regards to the World Juniors. And stay tuned to Craig Button over the next month because he'll be pumping out World Juniors preview content every day. And at the same time, maybe trying not to tip his hand too much on his draft strategy. So that'll be interesting. But certainly you'll pick up lots of good information there, as you will with number 6 on the leaderboard, EliteProspects.com. And Elite Prospects has been a huge partner of UFFS from day one with the hockey platform. Huge shout out to Peter Sibner, one of the founders of Elite Prospects. They have provided a lot of the data, and the player databases are obviously synced to Elite Prospects. And we wouldn't have the hockey platform we do without Elite Prospects. So very grateful to Peter Sibner, as well as Rob Love, who's been a big proponent of UFFS. He has Fantilli analytics tool for scouting, for prospects, which will be hugely valuable to everybody that's drafting for UFWJ. If you don't have a Fantilli subscription, you should get on that immediately. But Rob Love obviously is Director of Business Development with Elite Prospects. He's a big part of their bidding group, as well as Ed Palumbo, who we all know in stat. He's actually now working for Elite Prospects with Rob Love in the sales side. So great to have Big Ed as well as Rob Love. And like I said, starting at the top with Peter Sibner and the Elite Prospects group. And it's my understanding, Dean, that group is also going to be working in the EP Rinkside content team, which obviously includes guys like JD Burke and Cam Robinson, two guys I know really well from the Vancouver area here in BC. I actually sat with JD Burke, was in the same row as me, media row as me at the 2019 World Juniors in Vancouver. We covered it live together. So be great to have JD and Cam hopefully putting their heads together with Rob and Ed and drafting that franchise for Elite Prospects if they're successful. And then you run down the listing, Rob Conte of the Godfathers, and that's the Gumpa Sports and Entertainment Group. They're another huge supporter of UFFS. Obviously, we know Nelson Martins is the scout with Wise Guys Prospects. They have a lot of talent that'll be on display in the World Juniors. They'll try and draft some of their own guys, draft some other guys, but Rob, Nelson, and Paul as well are really looking forward to this. Stefan Hoffman's a newer name to me, but he's certainly a friend of the founders, well-known, good friend of Andrea Krandic and Nathan Bender, so we're hoping to see Stefan get involved with UFFS. Michael P. is actually Michael Pagano from the Doom franchise in football, and I don't know personally if Michael's a huge hockey guy, but again, he's been involved in the UFAFL. He's got a great brand there with Doom, and he's looking to get involved on the hockey side. Dale Hardy, Dean, is the final name currently on the leaderboard at $650 USD. Dale Hardy has Spitfire Scouting, and he was one of the original scouts in the UFHL, part of the Futures auction back last August 2020. Cleaned up, had a great showing, the best showing of any scout in the 2021 UFHL entry auction. Several of his prospects turned a huge profit, were top 10 picks in the NHL, as well as first-round picks in the UFHL entry auction. So Dale also has a UFAHL franchise, the Spitfires, who are an affiliate for the Grizzlies. And certainly a guy who's very involved in real-world hockey as well, as, doing some scouting, and heads up the Grenfell Spitfires. That's where Spitfire Scouting, the Spitfires, comes from. So Dale Hardy, expecting him to stay on the leaderboard and be a big part of UFWJ going forward. Now, number 11, Dean, this is a very interesting one. Dan Esposito, and I don't know if he's related to Tony and Phil, I should have tapped into that and seen, but obviously that's a hockey name. But Dan Esposito is a former NFL player. I believe he played with the Philadelphia Eagles, among others, part of the NFL Alumni Association. He's been accumulating franchises in the UFFS ecosystem as well. And he made a note, Dean, that this franchise is successful. Right now, they're off the leaderboard. I expect them to make a push. But Dan noted in the franchise auction group on Telegram that his ownership group would include 4 former professional athletes from 3 different sports. I believe there's a hockey player involved there as well as part of that ownership group. So that's a very powerful group and a fun group to watch as the leaderboard plays out. Number 12, Jesse Gill of the Brutes from the UFHL, a guy I go way back with, played hockey against him growing up. We were college roommates, played college hockey together. So definitely Jesse is on the leaderboard and looking to maybe make a move. Number 13, Dean, Crown Sports, another group that has really become a big player in UFFS in general. That is Tieran and Ireland Karanduk, who are the son and daughter of our president and our one of our founders, Tony Karanduk. So certainly his kids are very involved in the UFFS ecosystem. As we know, they have the Royals in the UFHL right there at the first place right now in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And their GM, Dean, is Arnie Entz, who also has Pipeline Prospects, who again is going to have a ton of the top 10 picks or top 20 picks in this UFWJ draft or property of Pipeline Prospects. And I know Arnie's probably sweating seeing himself off the leaderboard there at number 13, but I expect Tieran and Arnie have a plan to move up the leaderboard as well. They'll have a lot of fun down the stretch here in today's franchise auction. And last but not least, Dean, Can West Fantasy Sports, a group that, again, is involved in, they're one of the 4 groups that are involved in every single sport available, league available so far. UFHL, the football, UFAFL, the basketball, UFBA, and baseball, UFLB. So certainly Curtis Johnson, Harrison Fallow, they have Can West scouting agency, as well as certainly the Generals in the UFHL, and they're another group. I know Curtis Johnson well. His twin brother is Chad Johnson, former NHL goaltender. Curtis Johnson wore a letter playing Junior A when I covered the Lloydminster Bobcats probably about 15 years ago. So me and Curtis go way back as well, and I expect Can West Fantasy Sports Group won't be staying off the leaderboard for long today either. So I'm expecting lots of movement and lots of fun as we work our way through the next hour.
Well, listen, Can West Fantasy Sports and Dale Hardy, they don't need to buy a franchise to make money off this Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. They have enough prospects that are going to do so well in this tournament, and that's the really cool thing, is that this is going to give some ROI to scouts and franchises. I mean, we're certainly looking as Duckman's Domination at some of the players that we have on our protected list being bringing us some revenue in addition to what we hope to win in this tournament. One thing we should do, Larry, is say hi to everybody watching on Innovation Island. Maybe there's people dancing. I'm not really sure what's going on the island. It gets pretty crazy. And we should also maybe, just as we're 46 now, just under 46 minutes away from overtime, maybe run through exactly what is going to take place with overtime.
Yeah, Dean. So any bid in the final 2 minutes, the clock will reset to a full 2 minutes, which extends all 10 franchises, extends the leaderboard in whole. So the auction ends, Dean, when there's no bids for a full 2 minutes. And once there's been no bids for a full 2 minutes, then the top 10 bidders become the new UFWJ franchise owners. So certainly we saw with baseball, with UFLB, you can tell us how exciting that was. But 66 extensions, Dean. It went for an extra 41 minutes. That was extra innings. Today we're playing overtime, and certainly expecting a good amount of overtime. And actually, Dean, one thing you mentioned there that's really cool too is the amount of crossover between the UFHL, the scouting agencies, and now the UFWJ, and the strategy that'll come in when it's draft time on a month from this week. December 19th will be the inaugural draft for UFWJ, and just to see that strategy of groups like Spitfire Scouting with Dale Hardy, and Pipeline Prospects with Arnie Entz, and Can West Fantasy Sports and their scouting agency. Are they going to draft their own guys and try to keep some funds in house with the leasing system, or are they going to draft best player available no matter what. So there's certainly some strategy, as you'll be able to relate to as well, with high level scouting and Craig Button and look at Duckman's domination protected list. There's some guys like William Eklund. There's going to be some star power in this tournament from some of those UFHL protected lists, as well as top prospects that are still property of scouting agencies on the UFFS platform. So there's going to be a ton of strategy involved with drafting and really seeing how that leaderboard shakes out over the next 45 minutes.
It's strategy and where you want to be on that leaderboard, strategy when it comes to this scoring system. I mean, there is, even Craig and I, in just our really, really preliminary discussions, we had like 4 different ways we could attack this. So, take us through the scoring system for those that are watching. I'll keep an eye on the leaderboard, and if there's a big change, we'll pop it up.
It is important, Dean, to always know the scoring system that you're playing in, because it's not a standard points league where it's just every goal and every assist is 1 point and every goalie win is 2 points or whatever. As you see here, it's a little more complex. Not super complex. We kept the categories pretty simplified certainly for the inaugural year. Maybe you add in shots or something like that down the road. So some categories. For now, obviously the big ones, your goals, your assists, your power play, shorthanded points, game-winning goals, and penalty minutes for the skaters. And then over on the goaltenders, Dean, something we did slightly different from the UFHL to try and bump up the value of the top goalies, but also keep all goalies relevant. And you want a goalie from some of the countries that may be weaker or relegated. You don't want them to have negative value. You just want them to have a lower value, but still have some value. So goals against, we did lower from -1 to -0.5. So it's not a hit if there is a blowout in the tournament we often see at the World Juniors. And certainly a win's going to be 3 points, and saves are up slightly at 0.25 as well. So it'll be very interesting to see, Dean, that draft strategy, whether we see a ton of forwards off the board first, whether we see the big 3 goaltenders. It's going to be and I'm sure you're right, Dean. You said you and Craig have 4 different ways to attack it. I think there's going to be a lot of scenarios in play here as well when you consider this is a dynasty league and you have those futures. And at what round, you can take them in any of the 30 rounds of the draft. There's going to be 30 rounds, 300 players selected, all 250 players, Dean, that will be on 25-man rosters for the 10 countries in the World Junior Championship this year. All 250 will be drafted. All of them will have value in the UFWJ, as well as 50 future players for future upcoming years of the World Junior Championship. And it'll be interesting to see when franchises start reaching for those futures and the order that they come off the board as well. So it's not just a World Junior pool. It's much bigger than that when you add in the Dynasty League element.
And we have just another quick update on or look at the leaderboard. I don't believe there has been a new bid as of late, so we'll just run through the full leaderboard. Did you see a change?
Dan Esposito's made a move. He's jumped up, as we mentioned. That's a group with 4 professional athletes from 3 different sports, and he's jumped up to the number 6 spot, which actually bumped Dale Hardy out of the top 10 just off the leaderboard. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of competition here, Dean, and the FOMO effect is real, as we saw with UFLB. Nobody wants to be left out here. This is going to be such a revolutionary league. All 15 names, 14 names that are currently on the leaderboard, they all want a franchise. So where does that bidding go, and where's the stopping point for the 5 or so franchises that are unfortunately going to miss out? But as we know, Dean, it should also be noted that there's always ways to get involved. Some of these franchises may team up down the road. They may bring on more investors, so you're not necessarily left out. Some of them will be looking for general managers, obviously, so there'll be opportunities that way. Potentially for GMs. I don't know what Joseph Perez will be doing, but certainly he might be looking for a GM as he's new to the UFFS ecosystem. So there'll be opportunities. The door doesn't close at the end of the franchise auction, but certainly the 10 coveted spots on the leaderboard. And as we all know, Dean, when it's an inaugural draft, there's nothing more fun than that first year being part of it. I mean, not only that, Dean, you get to create your own country, your own flag, your own brand, all the things that go into UFFS beyond just getting to draft the original roster and have your returning players and your future players. But there's so much more to this with the branding side. And like I said, that FOMO effect is real. And I see some names off the leaderboard at the bottom right now, Dean, that I don't think are wanting to miss out on the UFWJ. So we're definitely going to see some bidding wars down the stretch.
All right, under 40 minutes to go before we get into overtime, and we could spend way more than 40 minutes talking about the legendary overtime goals that have been produced at the World Juniors, and which of these guys is going to be an overtime winner at this year's World Juniors. We want to get a franchise. There's no doubt about it. But if the franchises go for out of our price range, then that just means that this is going to be a massive success, and a guy like William Eklund is going to bring us some revenue for Duckman's domination. So I look at this as a massive win-win. And of course, Shane Wright for high-level scouting. Was this an easy top 10 list to put together, or was it hard, maybe easy to add guys and hard to keep some guys off?
It was fairly easy, Dean. The one disclaimer here is there's no potential loans on the top 10 franchise players. Obviously, if a Quentin Byfield or an Alexander Holtz or Cole Perfetti, some of those guys are in play and they're loaned back to their countries, which haven't been announced yet, then certainly they're going to factor into this top 10 as well. But of the players that we know are going to be at this year's tournament, it was a fairly easy top 10. The one thing I'll note, Dean, is Mason Mctavish was certainly just recently reassigned to junior, and him and William Eklund were sort of battling it out for number 10 here. But you start at the top with the two big names from the 2023 NHL draft class, Dean. They're not draft eligible this year, but the following year. And if they're both at this tournament, you're going to get them for 2 years in UFWJ because they'll be returnees in Matvei Mishkov and Connor Bedard. That's why they're number 1, 2, because the potential to have them they could have decent roles this year. I think Mishkov will be a significant player for Russia this year. But when they're returning for you next year and you go into that first round with Matvei Mishkov already on your roster, and you're going to make a new first round pick, but you already have Mishkov ready to go for the next year's tournament as likely the MVP or potential MVP with Bedard, I think that's why they're number 1, 2. Shane Wright, obviously, consensus number 1 prospect for this 2022 NHL draft. He's certainly going to be a huge franchise player. And then in succession, Dean, the 3 goalies, Askarov from Russia, Kosa from Canada, and Jesper Wallstad from Sweden, all top 20 picks over the last 2 NHL draft years. They're going to be the big 3 in this tournament. And the goaltending in this year's tournament is going to be better than it has in recent memory, absolutely. And then you get into the 2 biggest defensemen, Dean. Obviously, Jake Sanderson was a top 5 pick 2 years ago, and Owen Power was the number 1 overall pick by the Buffalo Sabres in this year's 2021 NHL draft. And then last but not least, Beniers and Eklund, 2 top 10 picks in this year's 2021 NHL draft. Both forwards that'll be go-to guys for their respective countries, USA and Sweden.
So much talent to look at and different positions depending on when you go, and will that first goalie start a run? There is just so many options. I think we'd be, we're all expecting some of those forwards to go extremely high, but as you mentioned, it's all strategy. Does somebody want to load up with a bunch of 19-year-olds just to win right now? There is so many different ways to look at it. But when we look at specifically the forwards, that brings in some interesting names, one of which was recently updated, as you mentioned, with Mctavish.
And the top 5 here, Dean, that you're looking at, were part of the top 10. So you're looking at 6 to 10 as the new names. But really, when I look at it, Dean, I look from 4 to 8. Those 5 forwards, Beniers, Eklund, Mctavish, Gunther, and Johnson, those were all top 10 picks in this year's 2021 NHL draft. They're all going to be in this year's tournament and real go-to guys. You got the 3 in a row from Canada, Mctavish, Gunther, Johnson. As we mentioned, Mctavish loaned back to or reassigned to the OHL's Peterborough Petes. He was such a key player at the U18s for Canada in April. Probably, as good or better than Shane Wright and Connor Bedard at that tournament. He was a driving force for Canada, and we're going to see him be a huge impact player. That's what really drove his draft stock all the way up to the 3rd overall pick in this year's NHL draft. Rounding out the top 10 forwards, team, these were the difficult decisions at number 9 and number 10. And I could have picked 10 different players for those 2 spots, but Marat Kuznetsov of Russia, I think he's going to be their top line center, playing with guys like Mishkov, and I think he's going to be a a real impact player for Russia, kind of have his coming out party as an offensive star in this year's tournament. And Atu Räty, who obviously was left off last year's World Junior team for Finland, and as a result, really tumbled down the draft rankings, ended up being a second rounder. While you look at the summer showcase, he was dominant there at the World Junior Summer Showcase this year after being a second round pick. It was funny, Dean. The first round was the night before that tournament, and the second round was the next day. And that morning before the second round, Atu Räty went out and scored like 4 goals or had a hat trick and really made an emphatic statement. And he's been really good. Just the Four Nations tournament last week was dominant as Finland's top line center. But Roni Hirvonen, Dean, the Toronto Maple Leafs second round pick from 2 years ago, as well from Finland. It was going to be Räty or Hirvonen, Roni Hirvonen, for that number 10 spot. A coin flip between the Finns, and Räty came out on top as certainly the bigger name, historically speaking, of his pedigree heading into last year's draft, where he was this year's draft, he was projected to be the first overall pick at one point, slid to the second round, and now his stock is back on the rise.
Well, it was a big one. It was enough to convince Alex Leblanc. He went, I'm pretty sure it was Alex that bid hard, and there was a bidding war, and he's being paid off for it now because the investment looks pretty good. Not looking good for those guys at the bottom, but you know what, Larry? We have been through enough of these auctions to know that things really don't start heating up until certainly we get closer to overtime. I mean, there's not a lot of bidding during the weekend. It's fun to check in every once in a while. We know it's going to start heating up with just over 32 minutes to go as we bring in a look at your top defenders.
And there's a big four here, in my opinion, Dean. The two from USA, Jake Sanderson and Luke Hughes, I think they're going to be, if USA is going to repeat as gold medalists in this year's World Juniors, obviously they defeated Canada in last year's gold medal game. Sanderson and Hughes are going to be a huge part of that. Owen Power, I mean, obviously first overall pick. He's the top scoring defenseman in all of NCAA with Michigan, a powerhouse team there. And then Simon Edmondson, Dean, is one of the best under 20 defensemen ever in the CHL based on the stats he's putting up this season. Some questioned his offensive ability in his draft year. Steve Yzerman did not. He got Mitre the year before and then comes back with Simon Edmondson, and they're looking like, the future top defense pair for the Detroit Red Wings. But certainly those are the big four. And then there's sort of the next three here with Caden Cooley, who I think will be Canada's captain at the World Juniors. He's captained this age group at the Holinka and past tournaments. So I think Caden Cooley will probably wear the C for Canada, but not a hugely offensive guy, but had a really strong showing in Montreal's training camp this fall. Topi Nimella, Dean, a Toronto Maple Leafs prospect. He's leading the Liga in scoring right now as a defenseman. Obviously putting up, point per game type stats. Very impressive. He'll be Finland's go-to defender. And Shakir McCamadoulan, much maligned in his draft year and controversial first-round pick by the New Jersey Devils. He's done nothing but improve and make that draft spot look legit since in the years since his draft. So he's going to be a big impact player for Russia, as will Daniil Chayka down at the bottom of the leader, the top 10 defenders. And then Simon Nemec, Dean, from Slovakia as a draft eligible guy, the only draft eligible defender on this list of top 10 defenders. I think he's going to be a go-to guy for Slovakia, his second time at the World Juniors. So he's going to be, and both were in Edmonton. He's going to come in looking to make a statement that he's a top 3 pick in this year's NHL draft. And Brant Clark, certainly a guy who stood out for Canada at the U18 Worlds in April and a top 10 pick in the NHL draft as well this year. So you look at that, Dean, and you get any of those 10 defenders, you're going to be very happy heading into the UFWJ tournament.
Well, I look at that list and I remember the list for the top 10 franchise players, and then I look at the leaderboard and I'm seeing that those two top defensemen are not going for a lot of money right now. When you look at, number 8, number 9 at the $700 spot, I'll scroll down as so everybody can see it and not just me. But there's some really good value right now. And keep in mind, when I say top 10, there are only 10 teams. This is not UFLB. This is not UFAFL or even Legends League where there were 16 teams. This is 10. So, you're getting a top 10 player, but how high do you want to go? Are you okay being in the bottom half of that top 10 in the back half and taking one of those defensemen, or do you want to jump up? This is, we're less than 30 minutes, but the value is there right now. And keep in mind, ties are important, and maybe you can explain how those ties will work, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, supply and demand. With only 10 franchises available in UFWJ, we already see 14 bidders. There could be a couple latecomers to the party here to shake things up yet as well. There's been some interest waiting to hear if they'll officially become bidders. But certainly, the leaderboard with only 10 spots on this leaderboard, supply and demand, and like I said, that FOMO effect. But the way ties work, Dean, is whoever bids first at a spot, they're all time-stamped, as you can see the bids, and whoever has that spot first, they get priority going forward in the auction, as well as in the draft position priority as well. So here you see actually at number 10 and 11, there's a tie. 650 is the last bid on the leaderboard, but Michael Pagano was the first bidder at 650. Dale Hardy went 650 after him. And obviously, Dale Hardy, as you see, is just below that red cut line. So if you're the first bidder at a dollar amount, anybody who bids the same as you will fall behind you at that in the order that the bids were received.
Okay, so we've been in enough drafts, certainly you and I and everybody involved in this league are probably draft veterans, I'm hoping, or their GMs will be. And you always see it in every sport. Sometimes it's quarterbacks in football, and hockey, the goalie run. And it sometimes starts an avalanche in bigger pools. I'll be really interesting to see how the goalies and when the goalies go, particularly as a guy who hopes to have a franchise. And it'll be interesting to see what Craig's approach is to the goaltending. But how did you approach this goaltending list?
Well, it starts with the big three, as mentioned, Dean. Askarov in Russia, Kosa in Canada, and Wallstad in Sweden. They're top 20 picks in the NHL. They're going to be franchise goaltenders in the NHL. Sebastian Kosa looking to avenge that gold medal loss to the U.S. He was left off last year's World Junior team, Dean. And that was somewhat surprising that he wasn't at the selection camp and didn't have a chance to make that team. And not only that, Dean, this tournament is in Edmonton. Sebastian Kosa backstops the Edmonton Oil Kings, who are one of the top, if not the top junior teams in Canada in the CHL. So he's going to be a huge player here. But you look at Askarov and Wallstad, and they're proven themselves in professional leagues amongst men in Russia and Sweden. They're the next big goaltenders out of Europe. So there is a bit of a drop-off after number 3, Dean. I do expect the big three to probably go in the first round or in the top 15. And then it'll be interesting to see the order after that, who goes and where. But I think obviously with the USA being the defending gold medalists and always a medal contender, I think you have to go Drew Camiso, assuming he's their starter. All signs point to Camiso being the go-to guy this year because guys Spencer Knight and Dustin Wolf have moved on. So I think Camiso's there. And then what I find really interesting about that goaltender top 10, Dean, is the countries that aren't as decided. Who's going to, Joel Blomqvist is a returnee for Finland, but Levi Merilainen has been really good throughout his draft year and throughout this season. They're going to compete for the net, as well as Nick Malik and Jan Bednar with the Czech Republic. Who's going to prevail in the Czech crease? And then the sleeper of the tournament, or not so much really a sleeper, a live underdog, you can say, is Slovakia. And Simon Letkozy, who was a big, emergence. He was one of the surprise players at last year's World Juniors. He went straight from the World Juniors, Dean, where he was a star, played a starring role for Slovakia, became their starter, and really was their go-to guy in net. Goes straight from there to USHL Chicago, backstops the Chicago Steel to a USHL championship. He's actually playing with a different team in the UFHL this season, Dean. But Simon Letkozy's already in North America, very accustomed guy. I think Slovakia is going to be strong franchise, so I think he's going to go quite high in the draft. And Kelly Klang as Jesper Wallsted's backup with Sweden. He's going to get some games in the preliminary round likely. But the interesting thing with goaltending, Dean, is you see no Netherlands and no Austria. Only 7 of the 10 countries are represented among the 10 goalies, which means you got 3 backups on that list with Finland, Czech Republic, and Sweden. So going to be very interesting to see who goes for Germany, Switzerland, and Austria's starting goalie and what round those countries go for that are maybe looking like they'll be out in the quarterfinals or potentially be relegated and miss the medal round.
All right, I didn't want to interrupt you, but we do have movement on the leaderboard. As you can see, a couple of guys have jumped up in Rob Conte jumping into the number 4 spot. Jeremy Plamondin still there in number 5, and a little bit more movement for you there as well, Larry.
I see that. Dean Millard just jumped up to the 3rd overall spot right now on the leaderboard. And so, yeah, Dean and Craig are going hard. They want to, maybe Shane Wright's in that spot. And certainly he's a member of high-level scouting. It would be, if Mishkov and Bedard do go 1-2, you'd love to have Shane Wright right there at number 3. So that could be a great settling spot for Dean and Craig and their ownership group. But certainly Rob Conte as well. Like I said, Dean, with the and Nelson Martin's there with Wise Guys prospects. They're going to have a lot of fun in this tournament if they're a successful bidder, and they're guys that have really taken to the scouting side. They're one of the more active scouts in UFFS hockey side for sure.
All right, so movement. I'll keep you up to date on that. This is a really interesting top 10 list, and the thing is, we can do these lists, and we did the mock draft the other day. Now, when you go to draft, you're going to know these answers, but these could be guys that could make or break your team and could make or break a country's chances at this tournament. I mean, you look at some of the guys in some of the countries that in Germany, those would be massive for those countries. Canada, they can get away with not getting some of these guys, but if you're bidding on a franchise, these could be huge players for you.
And these 10, Dean, are the question marks as of today, because obviously none of these loans have been announced yet. Some are more likely than others. I mean, Seth Jarvis is the one that I pick out, Dean, because I thought he was getting the 9-game cup of coffee, kind of like Mason Mctavish, and he'd be back in Portland lighting up the WHL, and he would be a big player for Canada at this year's tournament. Well, he's scoring every night for the Hurricanes now. How can they send him away? He's become such a key player, so he might not be available for Canada. Cole Perfetti and Alexander Holtz, they've been huge scoring stars, snipers among this age group. When you go back to the Holinka and you come through all these summer showcases and stuff, I think Perfetti and Holtz are big names that probably will be in the tournament, although Holtz is producing for the Devils right now as well. Quinton Byfield, Dean, is the biggest question mark on this list. Obviously has the ankle fracture, the broken ankle, can't catch a break injury-wise, so he's been sidelined all season since that preseason injury with the Los Angeles Kings. Is he going to be healthy in time for either Canada's selection camp or to be part of the roster? So certainly Quinton Byfield's a big question mark. The 2 Germans, Dean, how high do you take them is the question, because again, if Germany doesn't make the past the quarterfinals, or heaven forbid they get relegated and they don't make it to the medal round, then you're going to lose either 2 or 3 games played in a total points tournament, and getting those extra 2 games are huge. But certainly JJ Peterka and Lucas Reichel are going to be the starring players for Germany. And then you go down the list, Tyson Forster and Roby Jarventi and Jacob Perreault are 3 guys that are putting up good numbers in the AHL. I think they'll be impact players in the tournament, as well as Helge Grans, likely top pairing defender for Sweden, who's been playing in the AHL for Los Angeles' affiliate there in Ontario, California. So very interesting. Dean, the names that aren't on that list, Tim Stutzla. Obviously, he's a sophomore in the NHL already. I can't imagine Ottawa's going to loan him back to Germany a second time. Lucas Raymond, he's the front runner for the Calder Trophy. I don't think Sweden's going to get him from Detroit. And certainly Jamie Drysdale as well, Dean, another sophomore in the NHL who has a big role on a resurgent young Anaheim team. And last but not least, Cole Sillinger, who was a bit of a surprise to make the NHL this year. But again, a guy who keeps contributing for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And can they afford to loan him back to Canada to really go out there and shine in this best-on-best showcase amongst his peers? Or is he more important to their NHL lineup? And right now, I would say Cole Sillinger is probably more important to Columbus. And now we look at the leaderboard, Dean. I see you got it up, and Can West Fantasy Sports Group is now up to number 3. No surprise there that Curtis Johnson would make a move at some point. Him and Harrison Fowler, such a big part of the UFFS community and the scouting side, as well as franchises, and they'll be very interested to be part of UFWJ. And I'm sure they already got, as we're running through my lists, I'm sure they're looking at their lists and cross-referencing, because they'll be very prepared for this draft. And Jeremy Plamondin as well, Dean. is also moved up from 5 to 4 and overtaken Dean Millard and Craig Button, who've dropped back into 5th place. So that a little bit of movement in that top 5 as some bidders inch closer to, now we're looking at, Dean, we're here at number 8. We have 8 bids of $1,000 USD or more so far. And as you can see, Elite Prospects is hanging in there at number 8. And Dan Esposito and Stefan Hoffman rounding out the top 10. And then there's still some guys, Dean, that are below that cut line that I think are going to try to make a move at some point. I look at 2 in particular. I look at Dale Hardy from Spitfire Scouting, and I look at Crown Sports with Tieran Kranduk and obviously Arnie Entz being their GM from Pipeline Prospects. I think Dale and Arnie and Tieran, I think those guys are likely to make a move at some point here in the final 20 minutes.
Well, we're getting closer to overtime, but we are, as you mentioned, in the final 20 minutes. So we're in the third period right now, Larry. Time is ticking down. Decisions will have to be made. We are right now on a number 5 spot. Our goal certainly is to get a top 5 spot. First of all, our goal is to get a franchise. And our second goal is to be drafting in the top 5. But where you can really make or break this tournament, in my opinion, is when you're drafting late in the rounds and you're really going after the depth players, because those guys can make a difference, and sleeper picks. And you've got a dynamite list of sleeper picks.
Yeah, Dean, and we had to get some Austria and Switzerland representation on one of these lists. So let's go with the sleepers, and they're at the back of the list. But Senna Peters, I think, is a guy who's a big body forward, great skater for his size. I think he's going to, I think Marco Kasper is probably Austria's most talented player. He's a potential top 20 pick in this year's NHL draft as a forward. He's going to be a go-to guy, but Senna Peters is the sleeper on that Austrian team that, he's been through the draft a couple times already. Not a lot of people know who Senna Peters is. Keep an eye on him. And Lorenzo Canonico, Dean, from Switzerland. Again, I think Simon Knack is probably the bigger name in Switzerland. He's more likely to maybe be drafted high this year, a top scoring guy from the Portland Winterhawks in recent years. But I think Lorenzo Canonico, another import in the QMJHL, really had a disappointing draft year. His stock fell throughout last season. But I think he's a guy that could have a coming out party at this year's tournament. Reminds me a lot, Dean, of Valentin Nussbaumer, who fell all the way to the 7th round for the Arizona Coyotes. I had him in my 2nd round a couple of years ago. Really like Nussbaumer, really like Canonico as a guy who could use this tournament to become a riser, which I thought Nussbaumer did, Dean. I watched him live in Vancouver in 2019. I thought he had a terrific tournament. Obviously, Philip Kurashev was the goal-scoring star for Switzerland in that tournament, but I thought Valentin Nussbaumer, for a draft-eligible guy, had a great tournament. Somehow he fell to the 7th round. But Lorenzo Canonico, undrafted this year, I think we could see him get drafted with a good tournament. And then you look at the top of this list, Dean, Hendrix Lapierre. I mean, look back to the top 3, Dean. Let's go top 3. Lapierre, Alexander Pashin, and Daniel Lungman. Well, what do those 3 have in common? Let's go back to that 2019 Hlinka Gretzky Cup tournament. Those 3 were really breakout stars in that tournament. They were, goal-scoring leaders, had penalty shot goals, shootout goals, such huge roles. And this is that next wave now, that this is their age group, best on best showcase again. Same group that was at that Hlinka where they had starring roles along with Cole Perfetti. So I think those 3 are more so sleepers. Lapierre obviously had some injuries in his draft year, fell a bit. Maybe not top of mind, even though he did start this year with the Washington Capitals, scored his first NHL goal before getting reassigned to junior. But I think Hendrix Lapierre could be a guy that exceeds his draft position, as well as Pashin and Lungman, assuming they make the cut for Russia and Sweden, because they were later round draft picks. Samu Tuomalo, Dean, I think he's a guy that could really be a scoring sensation for Finland. Play a big role. I think he was closer than people expected to making Philadelphia, had some AHL time, now back in Finland. Thomas Bordeleau and Brock Faber from the U.S. team. Bordeleau, obviously, offensive catalyst guy that maybe flies a little bit under the radar on that stacked Michigan team with so much firepower above him, but he'll have a big role. Could be the top-line center for the Americans. And Brock Faber, highest-scoring returning defenseman from last year's gold medal team. Another guy that, 2nd rounder for the Los Angeles Kings, but doesn't get a ton of attention as far as household names. Brock Faber will be a go-to guy for the Americans at this year's tournament. Martin Kromiak in Slovakia. Again, Slovakia is a sleeper in general as a country for this tournament. Kromiak's going to be one of their go-to forwards. And then Florian Elias, Dean, of Germany. He was a great He had a great showing at last year's tournament. I'm personally shocked he went undrafted after how good he was for Germany at last year's World Juniors. Well, now he's coming back as an overager, and he's going to try and make one more statement to secure his potential draft status for 2022. And likely, you put Florian Elias between JJ Peterka and Lucas Reichel on a top line, especially with Tim Stutzla not being there. I think Germany's going to have one of the highest scoring lines in the tournament, and Florian Elias will be a big part of that.
Okay, we talked about Mooch. Mooch is kind of like the guy who goes to the wedding, just like throws the big tip in the thing, and just keep them coming, keep the scotches coming, or whatever it is, right? Like, I'm just gonna throw my tip out there. Well, we got a new leader on the board. We got a new leader, Larry. George Batchell has, and that group has taken over the leaderboard at 25.50.
Oh boy, we got and we didn't know if anybody would outdo Mooch and 7 Seas Blockchain Sports. But one thing we know, Dean, is George Batchell and his partner, Jope. We know Jope was the winning bidder in the UFBA franchise auction for basketball at, I believe, 12,000 USD. So Jope has been a big supporter of UFFS and of the score coin and SCO. He's a big holder of SCO, so he can certainly afford to be a big-time bidder here. And it is nice to see some movement at the top of the leaderboard. But again, I think Mooch is keeping an eye on this. And with Mooch, he's got, Jeff Ray and Mick Portoni, who are unfortunately probably sleeping right now and missed the fact that they got bumped down the leaderboard into number 2 because it's overnight there in Europe, as well as Jope will be sleeping overseas as well. Jope's from Finland, Dean. That should be mentioned. So we have some Finnish representation, some Switzerland, some France, some Italy is where Mick's at. So this is really a global league shaping up. The leaderboard has a lot of global representation, but it's going to be a battle there between Mooch and George Batchell's group at the top of the leaderboard. And I wouldn't be surprised if some others step up and challenge them in that 2,500 range.
Jeremy Plamondin has moved into the number 4 spot at $1,300. So that bumps us out of the top 5. Can West Fantasy Sports in at number 5 at $12.50. All right, Larry, we're 12 minutes, just over 12 minutes away from this auction. We have one more top 10 list that we're going to get to, but let's take a quick breather. And what show couldn't use a little bit more of Macho Man McNamara? So we'll hear a quick announcement from Andy McNamara about Ultimate NFTs. We'll get back into your top 10, and then we'll count down into overtime.
Well, you've all been waiting and asking, and it's finally here. The UFF Sports NFT platform is ready. It's coming this month, folks, okay? UltimateSportsNFTs.com. UltimateSportsNFTs.com. Get that, save that address, because it's coming. That means all the NFL legends we have on board, hockey, baseball, every sport is coming to one spot. So you don't have to worry about wondering, where do I find this NFT of this player? The stars are coming to UltimateSportsNFT.com. And just like the late, great Macho Man, Randy Savage once said, the cream always rises to the top, brother. Yeah, always rises to the top. You see, because there's no 40,000 three-pointers or slam dunks, brother. No. There's one of ones of Chris Carter, Eric Metcalf, Michael Vick, Nate Burleson, Tristan Jackson, Justice Hill, Ryan Malone, Ian Kinsler, champions, professionals, all coming, and many more, by the way, as well, all coming to UltimateSportsNFTs.com.
All right, we are back. Thanks to Macho Man McNamara for telling us the ultimate NFTs. That Terrence Crawford fight last night. I mean, there's the staking, the betting, UFW, Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. There's just so much going on, Larry. I sometimes it's almost overwhelming how much we have going, and we have right now is not a lot of time to tell you about what's going on. So let's quickly take a look at the auction as we get back into this.
Yeah, Dean, and excitement top to bottom on the leaderboard, but certainly we saw just prior to the commercial break there, and great job by Andy. Nobody can hype up Marketplace better than Andy. He cuts a great promo, big wrestling fan, and we love the energy and the enthusiasm he brings. But speaking of which, you look at the leaderboard, you see George Batchell and Seven battling it out at the top. And then, down that next wave, there's a grouping Joseph Perez and Jeremy Plamondin, and obviously Dean Millard and Craig Button rounding out the top 5. And then, you got a lot of big groups like Can West that could make a move. And as you mentioned, Dean, it's going to be very interesting to see elite prospects there holding steady at number 8 at $1,000. It's going to be very interesting to see which group the draft position, because the franchise auction results, Dean, the order of these bidders on the leaderboard at the end, the top 10, that's the order of the draft order, Dean, for every round. So if you're the number 1 bidder, you pick first overall, and you pick first in all 30 rounds. So it'll be interesting to see how important draft position is to different groups. But like I said, Dale Hardy, Crown Sports, Jesse Gill, Michael Pagano, just off the leaderboard. Do they make that move in upward to crack the top 10? Now, obviously, they got to make a bit of a move now. 650, the cutoff spot 700 USD. But you look there, Dean, 750, 800, and 850 are 3 spots that are all open between number 9 and number 10. So there's 3 spots there if somebody wants to jump up and take a 750, an 800, or an 850. I expect there'll be more movement before we're done in the next 8 minutes here.
Like, do not kick yourself because you didn't go to 750 and get into this. And this is the other thing, and this could come in for us too, is when we're at the draft and you get into round 16, 17, 18, you're going to start thinking, geez, I wish I would have spent an extra $200 or $250 or even $50 or $100. I could have got that player that just went 2 picks ahead of me. Think about that now, so you're not getting the regret when you are at the draft table. That's an important thing to think about right now, is how that extra $150 could move you up whatever amount of spots.
Certainly, just to get on that leaderboard, like you said, you don't want to be watching the live draft show, wishing you were part of it,
or the World Juniors,
or the World Juniors. Yeah, come Boxing Day, and you're following as a fan instead of following as a fan of your own country, creating your own country name, your own flag, your uniform. Everything that goes with being a franchise owner in the UFFS ecosystem. So again, I think we'll see some movement down the stretch here, Dean. And the other thing, Dean, that people have to think about when it comes to draft time is, where do you take your future prospects? Because again, this is a dynasty league, and that's one of the most interesting elements to this entire UFWJ, Dean, that's never been done before, is turn juniors from a pool into a dynasty league. And here you see my top 10, Dean, of guys that are not expected to be rostered for this year's tournament and available for the 5-man protected list. As mentioned, you can pick your protected list players in any of the 30 rounds. If somebody wants Aaron Kivi Harju, who could play in 3, maybe 4 World Juniors, they could step up and take him in the first round. Cole Iserman, Ivan Demidov, some of these guys are, they're 2024 eligible, so they're still 3 years away from their NHL draft, the 2022, 2023, and then finally 24. It'll be interesting to see where those guys go. Some guys that aren't on this list, Dean, that are certainly worth mentioning, Matthew Savoy and Logan Cooley. They're 2 guys that are likely top 10 picks for the 2022 draft. They're not on the list because possibly, Matthew Savoy's leading the WHL in scoring, scored 2 more goals last night for the Winnipeg Ice. Is he going to be at Canada's selection camp? So I left him off as a guy that has an outside shot at making this year's tournament. These are guys that are definitely for the future. Same with Logan Cooley. I think he has a decent shot at being on the American team. Another guy, Dean, Adam Fantilli, who maybe should have been number 2 on this list, because I don't think he's going to make this year's World Junior team for Canada, but he might be at selection camp for the experience. But obviously a leading scorer there with the USHL Chicago, and going to Michigan, Adam Fantilli, right there with Matvey Mishkov and Connor Bedard for that top 3 in 2023. And Dalibor Dvorsky, another Slovakian forward who is going to be at this year's tournament most likely. Him and Mishkov are probably the 2023 prospects that have the best chance of not only being at this year's tournament, but making an impact.
All right, the counter says we are approaching 5 minutes, and then overtime will kick in. And Dan Esposito has made a move into the number 7 spot, so jumping just ahead of Rob Conte and just back of CanWest Fantasy Sports. And again, that's an interesting group of some former athletes, and they've got a pretty great name when it comes to certainly Canadian hockey lore.
Yeah, the Esposito family is, there's been some more recent ones too. Guys like Angelo Esposito obviously was a potential, first overall pick at one point. His career didn't quite pan out the way it was to, but he was a big name in more recent years. But certainly Phil and Tony Esposito, the Espo brothers, such a prominent hockey family. It'd be great to have another Esposito in the fold with UFFS, but we all know Dan as a football player. He was an NFLer, played for the Philadelphia Eagles, part of the NFL Alumni Association, big part of the Zilliqa community. Dan is a very progressive guy. He's been involved with Zilliqa and involved in cryptocurrency and the blockchain for some time. So certainly a big believer in UFFS and bringing athletes to the platform, which we'll be doing if his group is successful in today's UFWJ franchise auction, being that they have 4 professional athletes from 3 different sports comprising that ownership group.
That's awesome. 3 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We will see what comes of overtime, and then when we're talking about where people can go as far as getting into that top 10 or top 5. Look at these guys. Do you want to be there when the goalie run starts at number 4? You probably do, because, we talk about this, Larry. Goaltenders in this tournament, games played in any of our leagues are currency, and goaltenders could be pretty huge. As we just, I believe, had a change on the leaderboard, and we have a new leader. Mooch is he's still tipping. He's not just leaving, and he's still going because he's taken over the top spot. So I'll let you chime in on that and then get back to the goalies.
Yeah, 7 C's, Dean. They're going to be a huge player in the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors, affiliated with both Alpine Prospects, Dean, who is Jeff Ray's scouting agency, as well as Draft in Europe, which is Mick Portoni runs Draft in Europe. They're a real-world scouting agency, and Jeff Ray works with Mick Portoni with Draft in Europe, but they have separate agencies on the UFFS scouting side for hockey, with Jeff Ray being one of our original scouts. He has Alpine Prospects, and when you look down the listing, we just did a draft rankings for 2022, and Alpine Prospects had the most prospects. They had 28 out of the top 138. So there's going to be a ton of representation from Alpine Prospects, as well as you look at Red Army's protected list. You mentioned Askarov and Kossa as the goaltenders. Well, guess who has both Askarov and Kossa in the UFHL? Both of those top goaltenders, Russia's starter and Canada's starter, are both future members of Red Army. They're on that protected list for Jeff Ray. So you look at that list, and maybe that maybe although they're number 1, maybe they step up and take a goaltender at the top. Although I believe they also have the controlling interest of Matvey Mishkov. I believe they purchased him in the scouting side as well. So it'll be very interesting to see who they want number 1 overall, and where those goaltenders go. Like you said, Dean, 2 of them are property of UFHL protected list with Red Army. So Mooch and Jeff and Mick are going to have some interesting decisions, but certainly they're happy to be at the top of the leaderboard.
Okay, we are a minute and 20 seconds to go, and there, we just have our first overtime extension.
Yeah, first of many, I'm assuming. Again, Dean, I think the FOMO effect's going to take over. Interesting to see who made the move here.
It was us.
To trigger the first over. There you go. You're at number 4, Dean Millard and Craig Butt. I'm so used to seeing your name, Dean. It didn't flash to my memory, but great to see Dean and Craig jumping back up that leaderboard to 13, getting into that number 4 spot. So certainly the first of potentially many overtimes as we're into the final 2 minutes. And any bid now, Dean, is going to reset the clock to a full 2 minutes, and it extends all 10 franchises to the entire leaderboard. So if it hits 0, the top 10 bidders are the 10 franchise owners for UFWJ. So we're getting down to the final minute here, Dean, and it'll be interesting to see how much overtime we get. But certainly, if you're not on the leaderboard right now, you're in the final minute of overtime to whether or not you're going to move up and and snag one of these 10 coveted UFWJ franchises.
The crazy thing is, there's a franchise available right now for $750. The number 10 spot is at $700. We're going to keep the counter up here so we know what's happening. Somebody has to grab that team for $750. That's it. There we go. We just had an extension. It wasn't at the number 10 spot. I'm trying to think of, it's Crown Sports jumping in. Okay, so there we go. Crown Sports. I'm glad Arnie Entz is finally listening to me because they just jumped into that spot for $750. Arnie just doesn't listen to me because I'm from Manitoba, I think. But good to see them jumping in there. Now, how can somebody not get in for $800, Larry?
Yeah, and I think that's where you see the chain reaction, right? You see Arnie make his move, jumps into that top 10. You look who's not on the leaderboard. Dale Hardy is the one that really stands out to me. Spitfire Scouting. As we get into this final, minute and a half, I think Dale Hardy could make a move. But like other people have said, maybe Dale sits back and just enjoys the ROI on the prospects from Spitfire Scouting because he's going to have a lot of players in this year's tournament. But certainly we could see more movement. But to no surprise that Tieran and Ireland Karanduk and Arnie Entz with Crown Sports, they weren't going to miss out on this monumental, revolutionary dynasty league, the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors.
Jeremy Plamondin has moved into the number 4 hole, $1,400 for that bid, bumps us down to number 5. But quickly, you look at that. If you're in that spot, according to the top 10 franchises that Larry has, getting maybe the gold medal goalie, I don't know. We'll have to see. But Jeremy Plamondin making that move, what's going to happen? Is Dean Millard going to react? I don't know. Let's ask him. Dean, are you going to react? Well, we'll see. I don't want to spoil it. But 30 seconds to go, Larry. There is a lot of action still to be had.
One thing to note, Dean, is if you never want to risk slow internet. You don't want to let that. There we go. We got to reset, but you don't want to let it get down until 10 final 5 seconds, and your internet skip for whatever reason. We know the tech works on these auctions, but we have had people's internet malfunction at the worst possible time. So if you're considering bidding and you see it in that final 30 seconds, better sooner than later for sure. But again, like I said, Dean, another extension as we continue to work our way through overtime.
Yeah, Dale Hardy is in the number 10 spot at $800, bumping Crown Sports out. Elite Prospects is in the number 9 spot at $1,000. Rob Conte in number 8 at $1,050. Dan Esposito and his group at $1,200 in the number 7 hole. Can West Fantasy Sports at $1,250 in the number 6. And then there you see the top 5 on the leaderboard as we approach a minute and 6 seconds. And it's such a good point about bad internet. You just never want to leave it to the last second where you are putting either a spot where you want to draft or potentially getting a franchise at risk. So you do want to there obviously is some strategy, but there comes a point where you say, okay, just make the bid.
Exactly, Dean. And there is
somebody just did.
And there you see, I think there's going to be a bit of a bidding war here, Dean, for the last spot in the UFWJ. Dale Hardy has just overtaken Crown Sports. He's went to 900, Crown Sports at 850. As we know, Elite Prospects is at number 9 at 1,000. And I think that's where you're going to see. So there's still that 950. How long till Crown Sports makes that move to 950, and then where do we go from there is the big question. And obviously Elite Prospects, Rob Love, Ed Palumbo, Peter Sibner, they're going to want to stay involved. They're promoting the UFWJ, and it's going to be so fun to hopefully have them involved as a franchise owner. But as the clock winds down, Dean, there's going to be more movement at the top of the leaderboard, but I think bidding war to see who gets the last spot. And
Jeremy Plamondin.
The top here. Jeremy Plamondin has overtaken Joseph Perez into the number 3 spot. So Jeremy looking at those franchise players and seeing Bedard and Mishkov and Shane Wright thinking, you know what? The goalies would be great at 4, 5, and 6 or wherever the goalies go, but I'd like one of those top 3 young stud forwards. So potential at number 3, like we said, you could potentially get one of Mishkov, Bedard, or Wright. One of those 3 are definitely going to be available there. So
another reset.
Interesting that Jeremy Plamondin has jumped up there. And
Crown Sports, extension. Crown Sports jumping into the number 10 spot, 950. So now to get in, it's $1,000. And listen, that's $1,000 money well spent on this amazing thing. So who's going to win out? Is it going to be Crown? Is it going to be Dale? You know, they're no stranger to each other's bidding on prospects. So this is old hat to them.
It is, Dean, and something really cool here is the $1,000 spot just opened up. Elite Prospects has actually jumped ahead of Rob Conti and the Godfathers to 1150 into the number 8 spot. So obviously the leaderboard was trickling down, and Elite Prospects didn't want to fall off the leaderboard. They made their move up. So now we're looking at Rob Conti, Crown Sports, and Dale Hardy. All guys that are groups that are very involved in UFFS hockey scouting, all battling for that one last spot on the leaderboard. And do we see, Dean, that the number 10 franchise spot is going to get to $1,000? Right now, that spot's open, and I think that's what we're going to see here in the final minute is all 10 franchises selling for $1,000 or more by the looks of it. But we'll see what Dale Hardy has in store down the stretch here, as well as some other movement potentially higher in the draft order as we get into the final 30 seconds.
And when is the Nick Lewis moment going to happen? Like Nick Lewis in the baseball, it was like the battle royal, and then he just came into it. There we have our extension that has just moved Rob Conte, Dale Hardy going to $1,100. So that bumps Rob Conte into the number 10 spot and Crown Sports. But you just never know when somebody's going to come from the back room. You hear the stone cold glass breaking or something, and somebody comes in with a massive bid. We still have time for somebody who could be of waiting in the weeds this whole time, waiting for extensions to make their bid and really throw it up. But Rob Conte in the number 10 hole. So if you want to get in, it's $1,100 to get in for the number 10 spot. And if you want the top spot, you see it right there, 2,600 7 Seas blockchain with 1:15 to go, Larry.
Yeah, Dean, and this is the intense part now where you know these guys want in, and where is their stopping point, and who's going to make the big move here, because if Godfathers were to fall off that leaderboard, I don't think Rob Conte and Nelson Martins are done either with Wise Guys prospects and all they've invested in the scouting side and being able to have that vested interest in the World Juniors. Like we said, it's not only about being part of the, getting to create your own country, your own flag, your own uniform, getting to be part of the inaugural draft. It's when that puck drops on Boxing Day and the fourth liner for Austria scores a goal. And hey, look, Rob Conte's group, their country has this guy. And, you're really going to be cheering on that much more during the World Juniors. Every game, every goal, every save, everything that happens in the World Juniors is going to impact the UFWJ. And these 10 franchise owners, when that puck drops on Boxing Day, they've already been glued to their television sets in years from their national pride, but now they have their own country competing in the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. So can't wait to see how this plays out. As we see, Dean, Crown Sports, Arnie Entz with Tieran and Ireland Karanduk have made the move to 1,100. They're tied with Dale Hardy, but Dale Hardy has that priority because he was the first one to 1,100, but they've bumped out Rob Conte. So now you're looking at Elite Prospects at number 8 at 1,150. That's the next bid to get onto the leaderboard. So you got to Rob Conte and Nelson Martins would have to go up $100 to overtake, which would then bump Crown Sports off the bottom again. But certainly the countdown is on, Dean, here as we see the battle playing out to see who's going to get the final franchises. But we have 4 figures for all 10 franchises now will sell for over $1,000 USD to be part of the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors.
And that means that we're all playing for bigger money than maybe what we thought before. And I absolutely love it. And that alone should make people be a little bit more aggressive now in trying to get into that maybe top 5, top 3, whatever it might be, because 4 figures for every franchise. And I was just going to say before Crown Sports got back in, there's no way Arnie Entz is sitting on his couch thinking, I wish I had a franchise. He's going to be sitting on his couch looking at his franchise. I do not think that they will be outbid, but stranger things have happened. $1,100 is the low bid. So if you want to get in, it's a $1,150 to get a franchise. And then if you want to go into the top 5, well, you're looking at least $1,350, or no, you're looking at $1,400 because you got to get above us. So we'll see as we're into the final 20 seconds, Larry, what kind of an extension we'll have and where is it going to come from?
That's actually a good point, Dean. Does somebody want that top 5 spot? Does somebody throw in that 1400? It's sitting there open. And then what would be the reactionary move? Because 1450 would be there if Dean and Craig wanted to make that jump as well.
Well, Dale Hardy just answered you.
There you go. Dale Hardy is obviously people are watching the live finale, Dean, and enjoying it, and they're taking the advice, and maybe a little bit too much table talk there to let people know there is a spot open ahead of you. But we'll see if Dean and Craig make. There you got it. I was going to say I don't think that'll take long for the response. So now, if you want to try to match Joseph Perez at 1500, who would have the priority there, but. Certainly, we're looking down at the bottom as well, Dean, and Rob Conte and the Godfathers and Gumpa Sports and Entertainment Group. Are Nelson Martins and the Wise Guys with Rob, are they going to get back in here? And then you got to watch, Elite Prospects would be right in the wormhole there, as well as Crown Sports with Arnie Entz and Dan Esposito just ahead of them. So we may not be done here for a while yet with overtime playing out, and we're just waiting to see who is the hero, or who is the 10 franchises, the 10 winners of the UFWJ franchise auction.
And, is George Batchell going to say, $100 more and I get the number 1 pick? Or is Mooch just going to keep, one up? What else is going to happen as we enter what could be the final minute, but maybe not, as we saw certainly during baseball. And I said to you on UFHL Now, is this going to be our version of the Easter Epic or something? The Islanders and the Capitals, that great game with Kelly Rudy in one end, and the when are we going to get our orange slices? Because we're going into a number of overtimes here. We need to hydrate.
Yeah, exactly. Get the Gatorades out and the bars, fruit bars and stuff to hopefully get that energy down the stretch. But you mentioned George Batchell, Dean, and his partner Jope. He's had the flair for the dramatic in the other sport auctions. We've seen the moves he's made. He shook up that leaderboard pretty well in UFLB and baseball 2 weeks ago. He also had a lot of bidding wars at the top of the basketball auction and came out on top. So is he happy with George here
Dale
in
Hardy
second
made
place,
a move.
or do they have a move? There you go. Dale Hardy is back into the top 5, matching Joseph Perez at 1500, falling in behind him, but bumping Dean and Craig out of the top 5 back into 6th place there. So, and at the bottom, Dean, still hanging on is Crown Sports and Elite Prospects at numbers 9 and 10, $50 and $100 ahead of Rob Conte with the Godfathers and Nelson Martins there with Wise Guys Prospects in that 11th spot. And then you never know. I mean, guys like Stephen Hoffman and Michael Pagano and Jesse Gill, I'm sure they're still watching. There's still a minute left here at overtime, barring another extension. Maybe they're going to get the itch to get back into the bidding war for these final spots on the leaderboard. And one of 10, as Andrea Krandek continuously tweeted, that became the catchphrase for the UFWJ, be one of 10. And it's so true that we're seeing it play out now, the battle to be one of 10.
45 seconds to go. I'm much more nervous than I was during the UFLB auction. I was just so excited and thirsty during the UFLB auction. Now I'm nervous because we want to maintain a really good draft spot. Listen, I'm confident I could give Craig Button the 10 hole and he could draft a gold medal team. That's how confident I am in his abilities. But I want to give him as much help as humanly possible to be able to draft the best team. So we're here, 14 seconds. We're down into the final. Is this it, Larry? Is this where we're going to end overtime with George Batchell in the number 2 hole and 7 C's in the number 1 hole?
We're down to the final 3 seconds. We got a last second extension here, and let's see who stepped it up. Dean Millard into the number 3 spot.
Shocker.
There you go. So I don't know if that's Trish on the trigger there bidding on behalf or if Craig's running it, but we got Dean Millard. It's overtime is not ending. A buzzer beater there from
Jordan Eberle. Jordan Eberle. That was the Jordan Eberle goal.
The equalizer against Russia, and then the crowd goes wild for Dean Millard and Craig Button as they push themselves into that top 3. And as we mentioned, Dean, high-level scouting, Shane Wright. If by chance we see Mishkov and Bedard go 1-2, Shane Wright's looking pretty good there at number 3 to Dean and Craig. But certainly this leaderboard, Dean, has been a lot of fun throughout, and there's still possibilities both at the top and the bottom for movement as we see who will be the 1 of 10 and ultimately the 10 franchise owners in the Ultimate Fantasy Juniors.
All right, so we're counting down to possibly the final minute. We see 7 C's, number 1, George Batchell, 2, myself and Craig Button in the 3-hole, Jeremy Plamondin in number 4, and I think we just had a reset. Was it Dale Hardy that moved up? No, I don't know. Maybe it was Dan Esposito. We'll scroll down here, and I think Dan Esposito has now moved into the number 8 hole.
And Can West
there it
Fantasy
is.
Sports, Curtis Johnson also made a move. He's snugged in. He pulled up right next to you and Craig, tying you guys at 1,600 for now he's in the fifth overall pick spot, or the top 5.
Jeremy Plamondin has moved up.
And Jeremy Plamondin has also moved up to number 3, ahead of Dean and Craig. So yeah, there's a bidding war within the top 5 now we're seeing, Dean, as opposed to necessarily the bottom of the leaderboard, that top 5 positioning. And again, you look at those franchise players. Do you want a forward? Do you want a goaltender? Do you want a defenseman? And now we have Dean Millard overtaking Jeremy Plamondin again. So that little grouping there is causing quite the bidding war in that 3 to 5 range, as Can West Fantasy Sports, Jeremy Plamondin and Dean Millard are bidding each other up towards that $2,000 mark as well. But certainly lots of movement on the leaderboard. You see Joseph Perez has been at 1,500 throughout, comfortable there. Dale Hardy's equalized with him. Dan Esposito is at 1,300, looking pretty comfortable. And then this bottom grouping here, Dean, could produce some excitement. And there you have it. We have a new entry, Andy Karanduk. You wanted to know who is going to be the buzzer beater. Well, Horse Lake Scouting, the patriarch, Andy Karanduk, that's the father of Tony and Andrea, who we obviously know really well, has jumped in, couldn't resist. And I wondered if Andy might be a sleeper in this auction, because obviously he's been very active on the scouting side with Horse Lake Scouting, and they've got some good prospects that'll be drafted in the UFWJ, and now he's on the leaderboard in that number 10 spot. So congratulations to Andy Karanduk, who unfortunately is a Leafs fan, but definitely a huge hockey fan, and he's the reason Tony and Andrea, Andrea Karanduk, obviously one of the founders and the commissioner of UFWJ, the commissioner of the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, our NHL league, the UFHL, as well as Tony Karanduk, who grew up playing hockey. Tony played Junior A, played Triple A back in Saskatchewan. He's one of our sort of the figurehead, the primary, we call him the president, or the haunch is actually what we call Tony. But Tony and Andrea's love for hockey is thanks to Andy, and now Andy's on the leaderboard in the 10-hole with Horse Lake Scouting and Andy Karanduk.
40 seconds to go, and that's what I'm talking about. The glass breaks, and Andy comes running from the back room, and then there's chaos ensuing. And Andy Karanduk has actually been bumped out now. Elite Prospects is now in at 1150. So that means somebody else, I think, was it Crown Sports that came back in?
Yeah. So here's an interesting story. Grandfather against grandson, because Andy Karanduk and Tieran Karanduk are bidding against each other. Tieran with Crown Sports, who's the grandson of Andy. So we got some family bidding war going on here with the Karanduks, and then obviously Elite Prospects now in the 10-hole, Dean. And I know Rob Love and Ed Palumbo are monitoring this closely, and they're not going to want to get knocked out of the UFWJ either. So it'll be interesting to see what move Elite Prospects makes here in the final minute of the UFWJ franchise auction.
Yeah, and listen, everybody has a goal of where they want to draft. Some people are like, we'll just draft wherever because we can get a good team, and you can do that. We saw that in the mock drafts. You can do that to a point. But there's going to come a point in the draft where you're going to have buyer's regret, and you're going to wish you spent a little bit more to move up. I'm going to be really interesting to see what happens from 9 to 12 between Crown Sports, Andy Karanduk, Elite Prospects, and Rob Conte. All four heavily involved. We actually did have a reset there. And it was Andy, and now Crown Sports is back in. So this is going like wildfire here.
Quick little bidding war there. Andy had pulled up tied with Tieran, and Rob Love and Elite Prospects has then responded with their bid, and they're back up to 1250. So Elite Prospects was off the leaderboard for about 5 seconds, Dean, and Rob said, absolutely not. Elite Prospects is going to be part of the UFWJ, and not just they're not just here to take part; they're here to take over. As Andy McNamara would like that kind of a wrestling promo type thing. But I think Elite Prospects is definitely pumped to be part of this with guys like JD Burke and Cam Robinson, and really bringing in that side of their hockey content team and their scouting team. So Elite Prospects makes the quick move to get back ahead of Andy Karanduk, which then leaves Tieran Karanduk and Crown Sports with Arnie Entz and Pipeline Prospects just off the bottom of the leaderboard as overtime rages on.
Well, to use, you mentioned the wrestling, and we had Andy and his Macho Man impersonation. So, to play the heel role, I love it. Andy Karanduk chipping in $12.50 to our prize pool that we're going to win when we win this thing. So, I love it. All the more people to donate to us, and I'll be able to buy something nice for Trish. Craig will be able to buy something nice for his lovely wife. So, I love it. I'll play the heel, and I'll say we're going to win this. I'll call our shot right now, just like Philip Beavis, and they called their shot in the UFLB. We're going to win this whole thing. So everybody else contributing the prize money to us, we really appreciate it.
And no shortage of swagger. And actually, Dean, that wasn't a wrestling promo. That was a UFC promo. That was Conor McGregor, who one of his UFC interviews after one of his first wins said, took the mic from Joe Rogan and said, I'm not just here to take part, I'm here to take over for the Irish. And now you see, speaking of which, Dean, at the bottom of the leaderboard, Elite Prospects is back in that number 10 spot as Crown Sports, Arnie Entz, along with Tyrrell Karanduk. They've got Grandpa off the leaderboard again. Andy's down there at number 11 now as Tyrrell. Oh, and now Andy's right back in overtaking Elite Prospects. So Elite Prospects will have to step it up to and that didn't take long again. And they've actually now jumped ahead, Dean, ahead of Dan Esposito. So that's interesting. They were tired of that little back and forth 10 to 11. They've jumped all the way up to 8 now. So a little bit of breathing room for Elite Prospects, but certainly it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. The family bidding war between Andy and Tieran Karanduk, grandfather and grandson, as well as Dan Esposito now is tied for the last spot, but because he was there first, he's holding down the last spot ahead of Crown Sports. So I'm sure Dan's still following along as well. He's a big proponent of UFFS and wants to be part of the UFWJ.
Well, how nervous is Joseph Perez getting right now? Because the bidding war at the bottom starts creeping up towards those middle teams and even some of the top 5 teams.
And you look, Dean, Joseph Perez placed that bid basically 4 hours ago.
Right.
And he was one of the, at that point, he was number 2 on the leaderboard, or possibly even I think he was number 1 last night, and he fell to number 2 this morning. But he's basically, been in that spot all along and probably thought this will be a comfortable spot. And now you're right, the chair's heating up a little bit as the bidding war plays out behind him. So it'll be interesting to see. Joseph Perez currently holding down the 6th spot, but again, Dale Hardy's right there, Elite Prospects. And then you got, as we just seen, another extension here, Dean.
Jeremy Plamondin jumped over us into the number 3 spot. There at Jeremy's at 1750.
There you go. So now if Dean and Craig want one of those top 3 forwards, if that's the order we think the draft's going to play out, Jeremy Plamondin's in line. If he wants one of Mishka, Bedard, or Wright, he's guaranteed to get one of the 3 at that number 3 spot. But again, Dean, it wouldn't be surprising if a goaltender snuck into the top 3. Maybe somebody really likes Owen Power or Jake Sanderson or, Matty Beniers, defending gold medal, defending champion Americans. Matty Beniers is going to be their go-to number 1 forward. And actually, I think I said Thomas Bordelot might be their number 1 center earlier. He'll be number 2. Matty Beniers will be number 1. And Matty Beniers might be a guy that somebody reaches for in the top 3 from the defending gold medalists.
Andy Karanduk is in at number 9. Dan Esposito pushed to number 10. Crown Sports and Rob Conte on the outside looking in. So if Crown Sports wants back in, it's at least $13.50 for that number 10 spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Tieran and I'd love to be in the D's with Tieran and Arnie right now, because Arnie's got to be going, come on, we don't want to be left off this leaderboard. But again, if they make that move, I don't think Dan Esposito wants to be left out either. He's put together a really exciting ownership group, as we mentioned, the 4 professional athletes from 3 different sports involved there. So they'd like to stay on the leaderboard, but certainly Tieran and Arnie are probably debating how high they're going to go and whether or not they're going to get back on the board. And like I said, Elite Prospects, breathing a little bit easier there at 1450 with, that 1500 gap, but that can close quite quickly here in the final minute of overtime.
As we once again, as this is deja vu all over again, approach another final minute, and we've stressed, don't wait till the last minute because you never know when your internet is going to glitch. But sometimes you do need that. Well, we just had an extension there, so we'll see. And Dan Esposito is now in the 11 hole. Andy Karandak has jumped into the number 10 spot. Dan and Rob Conte on the outside looking in. So $1,400 gets you 1 of 10, and Crown Sports has just taken that back in the number 10 spot. So Andy Karandak is fallen down, and let's see where Dan Esposito went. Okay, they gave themselves some breathing room at the number 6 hole with a $1,600 bid.
Dan Esposito, the big mover there, jumping up to number 6 at 1,600, which, like you said, now puts some pressure on Joseph Perez as he falls down into the number 7 spot. And Dale Hardy and Elite Prospects and Crown Sports. And really what we're seeing here, Dean, is, how badly do Tieran Karandak at number 10 with Crown Sports and Andy Karandak at number 11 with Horse Lake Scouting. Where do those two, where's their stopping point, and who is going to back down in this bidding war, as we basically have 11 franchises wanting 10 spots right now. We haven't had a bid from Rob Conte, Stefan Hoffman, Michael Pagano, or Jesse Gill in some time. So it's basically one franchise's, the FOMO effect that we said right off the top of the show, Dean. One franchise is on the outside looking in, and they don't want to be. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this bidding war goes in the final 2 minutes of overtime. And we have had another extension, Dean.
It was Dale Hardy. So he moves ahead of CanWest Fantasy Sports into the number 5 spot, $50 ahead of CanWest. So Dale Hardy sitting there at $1,650, just 50 back of us and 50 ahead of CanWest. So recognizing the value of a top 5 spot there, and obviously value is what Dale Hardy recognizing value is what Dale. I'll tell you, it got really annoying doing the 2021 version of Tracking the Draft, and almost every prospect was from Spitfire. So it was an impressive haul that they certainly had. And we did have another extension. Crown Sports is on the outside looking in right now at the bottom. What is that family dynamic going on in the Karandak family right now?
I know. I was just thinking that as much as Tieran and Arnie are going back and forth in their own DMs, I'm sure there's some between Andy and Tieran, and maybe they'll end up merging. Maybe they'll come together and agree that we'll let one of them win, and maybe Arnie can still help be a GM with Andy, or vice versa. Maybe Tieran gets in there and leans on Grandpa for some advice from Horse Lake Scouting. But
where's
now,
Tony? Where's Tony in
out.
it all? We're like, this is like a tug of war of Tony here.
It is, yeah, exactly. Where's his? Is he cheering for his dad, or is he cheering for his son? And does Tieran come to Dad for a top up loan to knock out Grandpa, or how does this play out here on the leaderboard down the stretch as the Karandaks fight it out for that last spot? And again, now Elite Prospects, Dean, is right there as well. And like I said, Joseph Perez looked so safe an hour ago, and now that we're almost a half hour into overtime here, his spot's starting to get a little less secure.
So 30 seconds in this segment of overtime, and we have seen certainly a number of extensions. We're starting to approach UFLB in the fact that the time, like we were 41 minutes or something like that for UFLB. We're getting close. We're down to 15 seconds. Is this it? Oh, no, it's not. See, that's all you have to do is just ask the universe, and the universe will tell you. And now I'm going to scroll down so you're going to see just the perilous spot that CanWest is in now. Yeah, or Elite Prospects, Elite Prospects.
Elite Prospects, yeah. So what happened there was Tieran and Arnie, and Crowns overtook both Andy and Elite Prospects, jumped into that 1,500 spot, now tied with Joseph Perez. Priority goes to Joseph, who was there already last night as one of the number 1 bidder less than 24 hours ago. Now he's tied for the number 8 spot, but really, I mean, there's only $50 separating him from being off the leaderboard. And again, what's going to happen here? Can West. So not just the bottom, Dean, the top 5 are also having a bidding war, and Can West has moved up right, tied with Jeremy Plamondin, but following behind Jeremy Plamondin into that number 4 spot, just ahead of Dean and Craig, who are rounding out the top 5. So we've got bidding wars right from number 3 all the way down to number 11, Dean, and overtime rages on. Another extension as we say that, and Dean and Craig are they're back in that number 3 spot, pulling ahead of Jeremy Plamondin. And again, I think, not to ruin strategy or anything, but I think High Level Scouting's affiliation with, or having the property, Shane Wright being property of High Level Scouting, I think anywhere in that top 3 is an attractive spot. But like you said, Dean, you also got William Eklund on the protected list for Duckmans, and anywhere in this top 10, you're going to be able to draft a good franchise, but you definitely don't want to be on the outside looking in. And you look at the franchise players, at what point do the goaltenders start going? How high do the defensemen go? And in reality, is that the big 3 forwards, or is somebody looking to win now? They want the gold medal this year. Well, in all honesty, Matty Beniers and William Eklund might give you a better chance at winning gold this year than Matthew Mishkov or Connor Bedard. But being a dynasty league, Dean, and having Mishkov as a returnee next year, when they're going to be battling it out for the MVP of next year's World Juniors, certainly they're going to have a value if they could possibly be a 2-year player for a UFWJ franchise.
All right, so once again, we are into a final minute, and no movement in the top 2 in the last little while. We snuck into that 3 hole. We got Jeremy Plamondin and Can West rounding out the top 5, and then as we get down to the bottom, are they done? Like, have the Karandeks settled the family feud here, and they're good with their spots? Or are we going to see an extension in the final 20 seconds here, Larry, as the countdown continues?
And that's what we're waiting on, Dean, is that family feud. Is Andy, he pushed Tieran, he caused Tieran to spend a little more than maybe Arnie and Tieran had budgeted, but are they going to step up and knock elite prospects out of that top 10 again? And where's elite prospects going to go in the final 5 seconds here? We had an extension, and it wasn't at the bottom, Dean, so somebody's moving up. Jeremy Plamondin has jumped ahead into that number 3 spot again, so JP is not done. Old buddy of mine, Jeremy Plamondin, wants a top 3 pick potentially in the UFWJs, so all eyes were on the bottom. And actually, Dean,
Elite prospects, major move.
There you have it. You were wondering who's going to come over the top. Well, it's elite prospects. Rob Love, Ed Palumbo, and obviously Peter Sibner, one of the founders of Elite Prospects. They're going to be a big player in this tournament. We knew that coming into the auction, and they weren't happy picking 10th. And again, Dean, this isn't, if you're picking 10th, you don't get the 11th pick. You pick 10th and 20th and 30th and 300th over 30 rounds. So here, elite prospects have forced their way into the top 3 and looking a lot more comfortable than they were just a minute ago.
Wow. And you know what? That's a decision where they're maybe looking at it and saying there's just so much value, or there's just maybe they have a specific 3 guys. If you have a definitive top 3, why wouldn't you get into that spot? So the great thing is that it's more prize money for everybody, and there's still time for, is it going to be Andy Karandek that makes the move into that number 10 spot where Crown Sports sits right now? What's going to happen with Joseph Perez? And then is there going to be more movement into the top 5? We had some stagnated movement there for a while.
And Dean, now, like we said, look at Joseph Perez, and we just had another mention. Believe it was Dale Hardy that moved up. Oh, no, we have Dean Millard. Dean Millard and Craig Button are back in the top 3. They've went to 2,000 USD, overtaking elite prospects. So, and Jeremy Plamondin right on your tail. They also bump elite prospects down to number 5. So Dean and Jeremy are jumped over elite prospects, but still elite prospects being in that top 5. That's a great spot for them. And now we see the bidding war, as we said, 1 and 2 have sort of had that, George and Seven Seas were that they were the front runners the last hour or so now, but everybody else is creeping up on them slowly but surely. And now we really have that bidding war right from 3 all the way down to that 11 spot. And does Andy have another move in him to bump out Tyrion, but possibly, you look at Joseph Perez now, tied for the last spot. He's got the priority because he had that bid in last night, but could Andy and Tyrion both overtake Joseph Perez? And then you got, Dan Esposito not too far ahead there as well. So as we enter the final minute of overtime, this will be interesting, Dean, to see if this order settles it or if somebody's got one more move up their sleeve.
I just look at that bottom, and I think, Crown Sports could move up at least one spot. Andy Karandek for $100 bumps Crown Sports, or even Joseph Perez down a little bit as we're approaching the 40-second mark. But we haven't heard a lot in the last little while from that bottom. It's been more of the jostling for position at the top that we've seen. So maybe they are done at the bottom, and will we be done at the top?
Yeah, now we're into the last 30 seconds, Dean. And like you said, maybe Tyrion and Andy are going to team up, and that's going to be a family franchise. Or maybe we're going to see, as we just saw, Dean, another extension.
And it's at the bottom.
I'm just trying to track it here. It's at the bottom.
Joseph Perez is now in the 10 hole.
Right. Crown Sports went up.
Crown Sports
made the move up to tie Dan Esposito to push Joseph Perez into that bubble spot. So now it's up to Andy Karandek. Does he want to make that move and knock Joseph out? And is Joseph here watching and following? Is he sweating? Is he ready to make his move to secure a franchise and maybe come over the top like Elite Prospects did? And certainly Dan Esposito will be watching closely as we get into the final minute and a half of overtime yet again with another extension.
Yeah, and it's a really good point. When you look at this, 8, 9, 10 or 9, 10, 11 spot, the Andy Karandek and Crown Sports could easily say, let's just put our money together and we'll just take a team and then, split the profits. Or they could say, let's put our money together and move up. Like, let's go over the top and make that move. Or they could just not be talking to each other because they're so mad at the other because they're outbidding them. But, oh, man, we need a Karandek cam for these shows from now on. We need to see what's going on in that family when the bidding is going on, as we take a look at what's happening up near the top with ticking down to 35 seconds to go, Larry. Maybe.
Yeah. And maybe, and Tyrion might be eating Christmas dinner in the doghouse at the Karandek family farm. We'll see. We'll see what Andy thinks of that. But certainly a great family, the Karandeks. They're the reason that UFFS Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports exists. So shout out right from the top to the bottom there. Andy, then Tony and Andrea and everybody else. So, and down to the final 10 seconds of the UFWJ franchise auction. We'll see if there's one more bid and play.
And we didn't. We got her.
That's all she wrote, Dean. So Andy stays off the leaderboard, and certainly congratulations to Mooch and 7 Seas. We hadn't talked about them in a while, Dean, as well as George Batchell right there at the top of the leaderboard. 7 Seas, which will be Mick Bertoni and Jeff Ray and Alex Muchinski. Congratulations for winning the UFWJ franchise auction, but congratulations to all of the top 10 bidders who are on the leaderboard and now members of the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors.
All right, well, 7 Seas, congratulations, Mooch. George Batchell, he was sending me message during this whole thing. I think he was trying to throw me off my game. He was in Duckman's domination. He was in Craig and I's corner, and then, rightfully so, he got his own job. So we got to keep George at bay a little bit. Just a quick announcement to make regarding this franchise. So Craig is not only going to be making our picks, but Craig's also a part owner of this franchise. So this is a guy who sees value in what we're doing and wanted to put his money involved. So not only will he be making our selections, he will be a part owner. And we also would like to welcome in a third owner that we've welcomed into this, and Ian Constable, who is no stranger to the UFFS platform and a big Flames fan. So I know he's loving the fact that he's going to be involved with Craig Button. So of course, Trish is the backbone of all of us, and all of our wives is the backbone of all of us. But that's the ownership group from our unnamed franchise as of now.
Wow, Dean, that's a big announcement that Craig Button has joined the ownership group for franchise number 3. So that's great. Craig's obviously been a big ambassador for UFFS. He helped promote the UFWJ, which we greatly appreciate. But to have Craig not only, being a consultant and a GM and making the picks, but now, his money's invested. Now he's got a little bit more pressure to perform and win a medal because he wants to win some of his own money back. So that's great, Dean. Great to see Elite Prospects in at number 5. How big is that to have the whole gang from Elite Prospects? Obviously we know Rob Love and Ed Palumbo from the sales team at Elite Prospects really well, but to have Peter Sibner, the founder, endorse UFFS and really give us our start on the hockey platform by helping provide the data for all the player profiles. We're well over 4,000, getting close to 5,000 hockey players registered on the UFFS platform. None of that would be possible without Peter Sibner and Elite Prospects. So great to have them in the fold, and hopefully their content team, guys like Cam Robinson and JD Burke, and those guys will be part of their draft war room and help them come up with their draft lists as well. And some familiar faces throughout the leaderboard as well, Dean. Obviously, Jeremy Plamondin in the top 5, a good buddy of mine. We got Can West Fantasy Sports with Curtis Johnson there, Dale Hardy with Spitfire Scouting, and then some, Dan Esposito. There's that group we talked about, Dean. 4 former professional athletes from 3 different sports. That's going to be a lot of fun getting them involved in UFWJ. And the real newcomer here, Dean, at number 10 is Joseph Perez. Looking forward to getting to know Joseph a lot better. As mentioned, an entrepreneur and an investor from California. Has some involvement with the American Sevens Football League, A7FL. So certainly Andy McNamara will be contacting Joseph Perez as well, talking some football. But great to have him involved as a bidder and in the hockey side. And then the family dynamic, Andy Kranduk left out in the cold, poor grandpa. But I do think Tieran will make sure that some of Andy's Horse Lake scouting prospects will be drafted. Keep an eye on that. I think you'll see the Crown Sports Country maybe pay it forward or pay it back a little by drafting some of the Horse Lake scouting picks. And obviously Wise Guys prospects, Dean, another one that was Rob Conti was left off the leaderboard. Well, they can sit back and enjoy the World Juniors because they're going to have a number of players from the Wise Guys Prospects Scouting Agency that will be drafted, and they'll have a vested interest and a rooting interest in the UFWJ tournament, even though they missed out as franchise owners.
Yeah, and you'll have some FOMO, but you'll also have some ROI coming back because of those. And I just love the scouting dynamic in this World Juniors. I mean, that's what the great scouts do is they project what the best players are going to do. And the amount of scouts that are involved in this, it really, really excites me because, as you mentioned, the scouting platform on UFFS is next level. Nothing out there like it, and it's growing and growing. And we already have some baseball scouts that are ready to get going and things like that. So it's a great concept, and it really allows scouts now to really strut their stuff in short-term form.
Yeah, Dean, shout out to the 2 newest scouts on the platform just today. Buster Bamford, which is an awesome name, by the way. Buster Bamford and Sean Latta, who's the brother of Jeremy Latta from obviously Five Eyes Scouting Services. They're going to have a lot of prospects drafted in UFWJ as well. But Sean Latta and Buster Bamford became the 2 newest scouts this morning on the UFFS platform, bringing the total number of scouts, Dean, to 107 active registered scouts. You register for $25 USD, 1B worth of our score coin. The UFFS platform has our own currency, SCO, the score coin. So you got to accumulate that in order to be involved in scouting, as well as have some Zilliqa for the gas fees. But $25 USD one-time payment, Dean, and that gets you. You're able to scout all sports. So right now you can scout football and hockey. Very soon you'll be able to scout basketball, and come February and March, after the futures auction in March, likely, I guess, maybe April Fools or April 1st will be when baseball scouting officially starts for UFLB. But you're right, something that's never before been done. You think of fantasy sports, nobody ever thinks of being a scout for fantasy sports, let alone getting an ROI from it. So yeah, certainly the scouting is a really unique, innovative part of the UFFS platform. And the scouts are going to get a good return on their investment from the UFWJ going forward.
And now it's time to start focusing on this stuff. Now you know where you're drafting. Well, first of all, you know if you're drafting, you know where you're drafting, and now you know, okay, this is who we have to target. And most likely one of these guys on this list will be that. But you know what? As Craig likes to say, there's no such thing as off the board. Whose board? Your board? Well, that's fine. We have our own board. So everybody's going to have their own 10, 20, 30, whatever, round you're looking at board. And, as you pointed out, there could be guys not on this list that a different franchise is taking a different approach at and looking at all the 19-year-olds at the top end.
Absolutely, Dean. And you look at the top 10 franchise players, and as mentioned, this omits all of the potential loan ringers, the guys that could be loaned back from pro. What if those guys are loaned, Dean? They're going to be bumping some of these guys off this list because they're going to be the front runners for the MVP of the tournament, the top forward, the top defender. There won't be any goaltenders bumping these three off, but certainly when you look at forwards and defense, I think you could see some guys coming back from pro, especially at forward. Cole Perfetti, Seth Jarvis, Quinton Byfield, Alexander Holtz, any of those guys. I mean, you could make a case for any of those four in the top three here ahead of the goaltenders. So we'll see how many loans happen. It's always a question mark whether or not they get loaned back for the World Juniors, but some of those guys will, especially the ones playing in the AHL, and they could definitely bump out some of these other players here into second-round picks instead of the top 10 franchise players in the first round.
I just think that games played, as we know, as anybody knows in our system, is currency. And so those three goaltenders, I think there's gonna be a run, and they're gonna go extremely high. I mean, because you want that guy you think is gonna play, not every game because they're gonna rotate a little bit in the round robin, but when you get to the medal round, you need games played, and we've seen it in the playoffs in the UFHL. Goaltenders are huge because they're playing every game.
And I think the betting lines aren't out yet for UFWJ or the WJC, but when people start putting out their predictions for this year's World Juniors, Dean, you're really going to see Canada, Russia, Sweden are going to be, prominent in the betting lines for potential medals, as will the USA. And, and like I said, Finland, Slovakia, some other countries could factor in there. But if you're getting a goaltender from Canada, Russia, or Sweden, especially a top goaltender that was a top 20 pick in the NHL, there's a good chance those guys are going to be playing in the medal games, and that gets you that many more points going forward. And the games played thing, Dean, you're right. That's a big part of draft strategy because two countries and two UFWJ franchises as well, not this year, but next year when we switch to the head-to-head format. But this year's tournament, Dean, in the actual World Juniors, two countries don't make the medal round. They're relegated. So if you have from those two countries down 3 games played, you don't get them for quarterfinals, semifinal, or a medal game. Then you got, 4 more countries are going to get eliminated in the quarterfinals. So you're going to miss out on a semifinal game and a medal. So when you're drafting, Dean, you kind of want to know, okay, because it's a total points league for year one from the start of the preliminary round through the gold medal game, you kind of got to think, okay, who are my final 4? Who are in those medal games? Because that's going to give you more games played. So when your draft strategy is partially going to be who you think, you're going to have a bracket going at the same time. You're going to have your own World Junior bracket. Okay, who's going to be what seed in the preliminary round? Who's going to play quarterfinals? Who's going to make it to those semifinal and medal games? And then those final 4, you want to draft, potentially draft heavy from them, even if you're taking a second liner over a first liner from a country that might lose out in the quarterfinals or be relegated. So as we mentioned with JJ Peterka and Lucas Reichel from Germany, if you don't think Germany's making the semifinals, you're down 2 games played if you take, a third liner from Canada over a first liner from Germany. So so much strategy goes into it, Dean, and it's going to be very exciting to see come December 19th when the inaugural draft for the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors.
And it is really interesting. I mean, do you take the top liner from Germany, like a Peterka, over a fourth liner from Canada? Probably not, because the fourth liner from Canada could be the first liner on Germany in most cases, and they're going to play more games. But you might take that first liner from Germany over the third or fourth liner from Finland or whatever, the Czech Republic, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to lose out on games, but this guy's going to get the power play time or whatever it is. So there is so much, and we'll have so much more time now to get our strategies together. We'll know pretty much what the teams are, because you can fill us in on, what is next as far as the draft, naming things. What do we as franchises in UFWJ need to do now?
Good point, Dean. Next up, you need to contact Liz. She's everywhere on Telegram. We'll get her into the owners group here after the live show, and you can touch base with Liz and start making arrangements for payment, which will be on Sunday, December 12th. So 3 weeks from today, your payment for your franchise is due. And once you've paid your franchise, Dean, and you want to pay sooner than later, because once you pay your franchise, then you can start, submitting your branding, because you need a country name, you need a country flag, you're designing your own flag, and your own uniform. So you're actually going to brand as a country for the UFWJ. So first step is complete payment. Second step is get your branding, and all the while, Dean, get those draft lists. Stay tuned to Craig Button. Stay tuned to EliteProspects.com. Ringside, get a subscription. They're going to be putting out a ton of great content leading up to the World Juniors. And certainly, Dean, like I said, here's the NFT marketplace. We've seen Terrence Crawford, amazing 10th round TKO stoppage of Sean Porter last night. Great boxing match, great partnership with Pixelbird and Zilliqa and UFFS. And, definitely check out the NFT marketplace in the weeks and months to come, as there'll be a lot of world-class NFTs for sale. Not just for sale, Dean, NFTs with utility. The digital athlete NFTs, the one-of-ones. If Shane writes a digital athlete NFT and he performs well in the UFWJ and the World Juniors, he's going to get a portion of if he helps a franchise win prize money, Shane Wright's going to get a portion of it, as will his NFT holders. So very important to start accumulating some digital athlete NFTs as well for the athletes that have already registered for the UFFS platform. And spoiler alert, Dean, we're going to have 3 very prominent hockey players, active hockey players. We already have Ryan Malone and Dave the Hammer Schultz as legends, Dean, on the UFFS platform. We have signed 3 active players. The only clue I'll tell you is they're all 3 defenders, and that's where I'll leave it. They're all defensemen, but very exciting to have those 3 being announced this coming week. They'll be out in the coming days on Telegram, on social media. Very exciting to have these guys. And one of them played for Canada at the World Juniors last year. We'll give you one extra clue, Dean, but a very exciting time for UFFS on the NFT side as well.
Yeah, and on that payment information of paying for the franchise, it's good. I might just be able to pay my franchise with the staking rewards I'm getting right now, thanks to UFFS. I mean, there's so many great things. We've talked about betting on UFHL now, but the staking is going bananas. It's absolutely unbelievable. So many great things happening for whether you're a franchise owner, you're a scout, or you're just holding score. It's great things happening, including Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. Any last thing you want to throw out there for anybody that's tuning in right now, Larry?
No, Dean, just a huge congratulations to the 10 new franchise owners in the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. Great to have you in the fold. Myself, Andrea, Nathan, we can't wait to really start putting together the league. And this year, like we said, it'll be total points. We're going to have to do a lot of the stats, but this is going to be progressively turning into, more of a head-to-head type league for the medal round and stuff in year 2 with more awards and more scoring categories. So the UFWJ will continue to evolve, but you're in on the ground floor, and it's going to be something special, something revolutionary with the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors Dynasty League for the World Juniors.
I don't know how we're going to share a gold medal between Craig, Ian, and I. That's going to be our toughest decision. Not who we're going to take at 3rd overall. Is who gets the medal for what week in the summer and the winter. That's going to be our toughest decision. But in all seriousness, congratulations to everybody who is now part of a franchise for Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. Congratulations to everybody who put in all the work for this. It's going to be so much fun, Larry, and I can't wait to draft. Can't wait to watch with so much more on the line. Congratulations on a terrific job, and we'll talk real soon. Thanks as always, Larry.
Thanks, Dean, and you nailed it. That the vested interest come Boxing Day is when, it's already feeling great to be a franchise owner in the UFWJ. When that puck drops on Boxing Day and your drafted rosters out there competing in your own country, it's going to be nothing like this has ever been done before, and it's going to blow some minds with the UFWJ.
All right. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in to our Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors franchise auction. You can always find more information at www.uffsports.com. Follow at the UFWJ and check out that Ultimate NFT marketplace. For Larry Fisher, I'm D. Millard. Have yourself a great rest of your Sunday. Thanks very much for tuning in.